Hey all you cool cats and kittens! Today I'm going to show you how to make a non-adhesive book cover. That means no glue. So here's an example that I've made with previous printmaking students. Cover, spine. The spine slides right out, and then the cover will just slide off. So it all has to do with the positioning and folding of paper and having the right materials. So the few things that you're going to need are what I have is already cut. This is a material that is called book board. It's like a composite board. It's pretty stiff. It's more dense than cardboard, but if cardboard is all that you have, that will be totally fine for right now. So you'll need a couple pieces like this. Obviously you have two covers, so you need enough for either side of your book. You will also need a ruler, a knife or scissors. A knife is probably better. A pencil, and some kind of make-a-fold device. You will also need a couple pieces of paper to use for your covers. I like to use paper that's a little bit thicker or a heavier weight than what is typically in a drawing pad. A drawing pad is what we would consider text weight paper, while something like construction paper or even like Bristol board is something that we would consider cover weight because it's a little bit thicker. I have two different kinds of paper so that you can see this process. I have some darker Kozo paper and then some cotton paper that I made, but you can use whatever you have at home. If you don't have access to certain things right now, consider going through and looking at like gift bags, or you could fold a piece of wrapping paper in half. Maybe a magazine cover or an old poster, something like that could work too. So I've already made one of my covers, and the other I'm going to make with you. So the first thing that I've done, what I have today is the snake book we did in the last video. I used a bigger piece of paper so that it's not itty bitty. And what I've done on the cover is I have measured the head, right, the top, the spine on this side, and then you'll see that I also have the width of the spine, and that's how thick this is going to be. When you're measuring that, you don't want to be like squeezing this as tight as it goes because that's not natural, but you do want to make them a little bit closer together. Something else to consider when you're measuring here and along the spine is you want to give it just a little bit of extra room. So consider adding about 1/8 of an inch to that real number so that the cover is a little bit bigger than your book block. This is a book block. All right. So once you have that measured, you will cut out two different covers of your board. Ta-da! Right? Okay, so we have two of these. We can put our book block aside. I've cut these out. If you are cutting something that's thicker than cardboard, you could use, for example, again, the back panel of your drawing pad. That's a really good material to use as well. You will not be able to cut through that in one slice with your X-Acto knife. Cut against your ruler for a straight edge and do multiple passes. Don't think you're going to get through it in just one cut. Do multiple passes. A sharp blade is always more efficient and safer. Keep your fingers out of the way. All right, I am going to angle you guys down so that you can see what I'm working on. Bye. So, this is what we're going to have when we finish. Two pieces of paper that are around my book block. So what I have here is basically these things are just folded together. It is kind of tight, but that's how it's supposed to be. So we will end up with bookboard cover and 2 pieces that fold in around each other. Now it's important to identify which one you want to be on the outside. I like this paper better, so it's going to be on the outside of my cover. You need to choose this, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, I know that I want this to be my cover. I'm going to put these aside. This cover goes this way. So we need to measure the height of our cover, which for me was 4 3/8 inches. Wow. Beautiful. Okay, so I have a long strip of this, and it's all the same height as my book cover. And you want it to be nice and long because you need 2 that you're going to make out of this, but you also need it to be extra on either side of this. So I'm going to lay my book cover down, and I'm going to leave at least 1 inch on either side here. This doesn't have to be straight, so I'm just going to freehand it. Excellent. Okay, now I'm going to put this aside. So for the back side of my book, now I need to measure the width of my cover. Ta-da! The same width. Okay, and then same thing here. And I'm going to trim this down. You still want at least 1 inch on either side. So I have my cover and then the back side of what I'm going to be making. Let's do this cover part first. So we can put aside this back sheet. What you're going to do is you're going to lay your book cover on top of the paper. Keep it in the middle. You're going to use your non-dominant hand, which for me is my left, and you're going to put pressure down here. What you're going to do then is you're going to fold this up and kind of use your fingers to press up against the edge of that book board. This is where having your bone folder or your knife comes in handy. Obviously, don't use the sharp side. But using like the back side here to press in and really make that crease is good. And then you're gonna fold over, keeping everything in the same spot. You're going to do this again, and you're going to kind of do this on top too. And what this is doing is it's creating a crease. So now I'm going to take my book board out, and you can see that I have this nice little width there. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to flatten basically one of those itty bitty creases. I'm going to use the back side of this butter knife here to fold down even more. And then there was the second part of that crease. So I'm going to ease this on up just a little bit like that. Okay, good. And I'm going to fold it down on that side. And then I'm going to just encourage that crease to stay right there like that. Awesome. So that's nice, right? That's exactly the thickness of our book board. So now I'm going to place my book board back in there, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Great. Let's encourage those creases. I'll do this next one. Great. Okay. So now my bookboard cover is going to fit nice and snug right inside that piece of cover. Okay, so we're going to put this aside, and now we're going to do that exact same thing, but we're going to do it the other direction and with the other piece of paper. They don't come together yet. These kind of book covers work really well for books that have more pages rather than fewer. So that first 8-page zine that we tried, there's not quite enough pages on there for this to make sense. But the snake fold or the bostaphedron, that would make sense, which is the structure that I'm using today. We're going to go in again, and like I said before, encourage those creases. Okay, now, here's where things get interesting. You're going to take your inside cover and have it sit nicely on your book like this, on your cover, okay? And then what we're going to do is we are going to take this piece, which is the front. So I have my one piece on here, and it is paper side down, so we have these folds here. We want to make sure that with this, we're going to cover, so I have it completely open. We're going to cover this. And so this is basically what it would look like, but what we need to do is we need to tuck this inside and underneath this piece here. Now you can see that I'm struggling a little bit to get it in there. Let's switch it up so that it'll go in more easily. So we have our folds here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to here's my crease, this is sort of the book block. So I'm going to make this more of an angle so that I can slide it in there like an envelope a lot more easily. Now, it's important that you don't cut to the front of your book cover here because you don't want there to be this missing corner. Okay, let's try this again. Nice, now let's do this side. Cutting those corners off really does help with this. All right, there we go. This paper, this white paper is a little bit loose, but that's okay. So I have one cover. Let me put this one back together. Oops. covers. So what we do now is we take our book block again. I wrote on the cover here, and that's okay because we're going to cover it, literally. So our first page is just going to slide in between these two sheets. And then same thing back here. Now you might, sometimes what happens is that you hit the other side of the paper in there. Just keep going. Cool, right? But now it's going to fall apart because we need a spine. So for the spine, I like to use the same paper that I did for the cover, but you can switch it up like I did with the other book. So it needs to be the same height as your book block. And then remember I showed you to measure the width of the spine. Let's see. I ballparked about 1/4 inch. You're only measuring the paper, not the covers. So I'm going to take this and what I'm going to do is I am going to leave at least 1/4 inch on either side. So I'm going to make a mark at, let's do a little bit more. I'll make a mark at 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 1/4 inch. That way, this is going to be the width of my spine. So again, 1/2, 3/4. This is just my book, 1 1/4. I'm going to make a cut here. And then this is where having a bone folder or your knife comes in handy. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to lay it down like I'm going to cut on this little line for how wide my spine is. And then I'm going to take the very tip of my butter knife. Don't use the sharp side. And I'm just putting pressure down, almost like you would be cutting, but you're not using the blade. And then I'm going to do it over here too. This is what we call scoring, again, and that's how we are going to encourage the crease. So now I can fold along these little lines that I just made. Encourage, encourage, encourage. And this is going to be my spine. Again, it is really helpful if you cut these corners a little bit. All right. And then this is going to slide in. Oh, hang on. And there you go. Non-adhesive book covers. Ooh. They do slide if they're not super tight, but it looks good. Good job, team. Hey guys, I know that video wasn't quite as much fun or as silly as the others, but it's a pretty complicated process. This is Georgia. Hi, George. I think next time we will learn how to make a simple pamphlet stitch book, which requires that you do have a needle and some thread, a little bit bigger needle than you would use for sewing clothes, and embroidery thread is what I usually like to use. So, see you next time.